Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Van Buren. Welcome to my premiere show of the Van Buren Variety Show. Glad to be here. I'm hoping you have a lot of fun with it. I'm going to have different guests. A little bit about the show before we start. The word variety is just what it means. Every Tuesday evening, I'm going to have a different guest on with a different interesting topic. It could be a profession. It could be a hobby. It might be a special interest or a special talent. Some nights I may have a musical guest on. There'll be all kinds of people I've been talking to that you'll see. So every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, please tune into the Van Buren Variety Show. Some people have already asked me, why am I doing this? What made me want to start a YouTube channel? Well, one word, fun. I'm going to have fun with this. It sounds like a great idea to meet interesting people, share them with you, their talents, their dreams. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot of things from the people that we're going to have on this show. So welcome aboard to the Van Buren Variety Show, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Without further ado, let me bring in my first guest on this great night, the premiere episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. A person many of you already know. I serve as executive producer for the Trinity Para-Cryptid research channel. I'm usually behind the scenes, maybe not as behind the scenes they'd like me to be, but we've had a lot of fun with the channel. So it was only natural that I would bring him on, as he's been an influence with me on this and has really helped me with this. So we're going to learn a little bit more about his channel. And let me put the subject at hand with you. The word cryptid. Some of you may have never even heard of that word. Some of you may have heard it, not sure what it is. Some of you may have heard it and don't really know everything there is to know about it. What does it involve? Specifically, what is this that we're talking about when we say cryptid? So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Tex, the host of the Trinity Para-Cryptid Research Channel. Welcome, Tex, to the Van Buren Variety Show.
Thank you, Bob. Be good. It's nice to be here, man. I'm glad you finally got her kicked off, and you know, it's been a long time coming. I know you've been nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs about it. But
do I look nervous to you? Do I look like I'm nervous at all about this channel, about the first premiere episode?
You're going to do just fine. You're going to do just fine. You know, don't sweat it. Just have a conversation, and you know, have fun like we do on the other channel.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Tex, for your support in this. Like I said, you've really been a big influence with me and a big help getting my own channel started. So I appreciate that. So
well,
let's
go ahead. Anything I can do for you, brother. I mean, hell, we've been friends for 30 plus years, going on 40. You think about it.
Almost 40. Now, you just aged us. You do know that, right?
Closer to 40 than it is 35, I guess, or 30. But yeah, we've been knocking around together quite a bit, and it's you're more like a little brother to me than you are anything else.
Thank you. Yeah, you're my big brother. I'm surprised you haven't beaten me up already with all the stuff I pulled in the last 35 years. But
yeah, I'm pretty patient.
I'll wear your patience, though. I'll give you that. So let's get to the subject at hand. My audience, like I said, we're here for like a variety. There's going to be a variety of topics here. Tonight's topic, though, as I said in my monologue, we're going to be talking about cryptids. And many people maybe have heard that word, not sure what it is, maybe have only guessed what that is. So I'll bring it to you, Tex. How would you define cryptid for the audience?
Well, a cryptid refers to really any unknown creature. I mean, there's a lot of under that umbrella. You know, you've got, of course, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, werewolves, dogmen, what they call pugway, which is, you know, what they little people, and any goat man, Loch Ness monster. Correct. You know, the Kraken, you know, is supposedly a mythical creature, but now they're thinking maybe it was the giant squid that was doing all this that was considered a myth, 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
Absolutely.
So a cryptid is basically any creature that's not recognized by mainstream, I guess you'd call it.
And that's kind of corrects me, because years
Obviously.
ago, when I'd hear the word cryptid, I would automatically think Bigfoot. Like, and I
Right.
always would narrow my definition of that. So that's not correct. Cryptid could be
No.
anything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we named the channel what we did, because we do so much. We delve into the paranormal, and we delve into cryptids, and so we just combined them. Para-Cryptid. So
Good.
there's a lot to investigate out there. So
Well, let's tend to take each section then, since there's all types of cryptids out there. Of course, the one that everyone knows about seems to be, at least when I think of cryptid, I think of Bigfoot. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And, and there's so many, movies out there, and there's so many to talk about there. The one that got me interested was this movie. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. It's the 1973 film, The Legend of Boggy Creek. I kind of put a promo out there. If you haven't seen this movie, it's really, really good. So watch it at night for special scares. So, but anyway, when I watched the show, that really got me interested in that. I mean, what is this creature? Where did he come from? So let me put that to you then, Tex. Bigfoot. Describe Bigfoot, what it is, how did it get here? How did he survive it? I'll leave the floor to you.
Well, first thing I'm going to tell you is there's no experts in this field. And if somebody tells you they're an expert, they're not. Because until you have a subject that you can sit down and you can study in a controlled environment, there's no way to become an expert on something. So
I see.
You have to be able to recreate experiments and recreate that stuff. We don't know what they are. Everybody has their own opinion, and it's a whole spectrum, and
I see.
It really goes from they're just an ape, some kind of ape that went left on the evolutionary chain, and all the way to people they say they're a type of primitive people. There's those that say they're aliens. There's those that say they're interdimensional beings, and they have all these special powers. So it goes all over the place. It's what some people believe, and on that scale. I personally, what I've seen was physical. Now I've experienced other stuff, but what I saw, which was a daylight sighting, about 50, 60 yards out. It was physical. From everything I could tell, it was a physical being.
Though, when I think of Bigfoot, I always think of, and I kind of, like I said, this is when I started out before I met you. When I think of Bigfoot, I would always go to Falk, Arkansas. I would think of that town. That's where the Legend of Boggy Creek was filmed, and that's where that story took place, was Falk, Arkansas.
Right.
But talking to you and keeping in touch with your channel, Bigfoot is not limited to Falk, Arkansas. There's been other sightings elsewhere. Is that a correct statement?
There has been sightings in every state of the union except for Hawaii. Except for Hawaii.
Alaska too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of them up there. In fact, in 1958 is when they found the tracks in the Pacific Northwest, and that's when the term Bigfoot was coined. And then in 1967, you had the Patterson-Gimlin film come out, which a lot of people have tried to say that was fake and everything else, and it was a guy in a suit. If it was a guy in a suit, now about that time period, the best thing you had out there was Planet of the Apes. Now this is millions of dollars, thrown in the best special effects minds in the world at that time.
Sure.
Those suits weren't even close to what you see on the Patterson-Gimlin field. So, if you look at the biomechanics of the creature and everything else, personally, I don't think there's any way that thing was fake. There's more proof out there that these creatures exist than there are that they don't.
Sure.
So where everything started, for most people, they'll say the Pacific Northwest. And for a long time, it was thought, okay, there's one Bigfoot, and he roams around the Pacific Northwest. Well, that's not the case. There's, in my opinion, tens of thousands of these things throughout the country.
Oh, wow.
And like
That's
I said,
pretty
they are in. When you break it down, though, when you look at all the unexplored habitat that the United States has,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take a number of 100,000, and you break it over 50 states, that's really not that many creatures, per state.
That's true.
So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Especially with all the, like I said, all the unexplored, habitat we've got. So, I mean, we've had sightings down here in Texas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's where I do most of my research. I've had sightings up there. I've had encounters up there. So they're all over. Don't let anybody fool you.
Well, let me ask you this then. I was going to say where they come from, but do you think, I'm asking your opinion, do you think they are a missing link in an evolutionary chain? Was it a species that just, is it a different species that we still don't know about? Kind of where'd they come from? Have they always been here? I would ask that question too.
Well, now, if you look at, going back centuries, there's cave drawings of them, from the Native Americans, stories about them. Almost every tribe has a name for them. Sasquatch is actually is a name that comes from Canada. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's just, and it stuck. Everybody just liked it. You've got Ohio grassman, you've got the skunk ape, you've got rougarou. Down in Louisiana, you've got call them boogers. It's
Mm-hmm.
wood apes. Hell, in Vietnam they call them rock apes, and supposedly our soldiers encountered them during the Vietnam War. So,
wow. Okay.
How long they've been here, there ain't no telling. I think they're a primate just like we're a primate. I think they're substantially smarter and, of course, bigger than any other primate out there as far as lower apes. I rank their intelligence, now this is just my opinion, I rank their intelligence up there with killer whales. A lot of people out there think they're even superior to us as far as intelligence goes. I don't think so, but some people have that opinion.
Well, you mentioned different sizes just now. What are some sizes? Big, small, like how many feet, can they get? Any stories on that or any data on that?
Yeah, there's been reports of, people seeing juveniles and infants.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, toddlers and all the way from that size, all the way up until 15 feet.
15 feet?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
I've got a picture that I believe is an alpha male out of Oklahoma that stands 12 feet.
Wow.
So you're looking
I
at
would
something.
not want to run into that.
No, he just rip you in half,
Sure.
But the one I saw during my daylight sighting, he was probably 8 feet.
8 feet tall. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Well, in your research on your channel, you get a lot of people talking about they've encountered them or seen them. Are they, in your opinion, mostly docile? Are they hostile? Or could it be a mixture of both? What's your research shown?
I think it's from what I've been able to determine. If you've ever been out camping in a state park, national park, whatever, or just in an out of the way place that's got good water around it and some timber that not a lot of people go in, you've probably been around these critters and you didn't even know it, because they're real curious. They're not out and out hostile. If they were, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. So they're not like a serial killer waiting around every tree to snatch you up and break you in half. That's not what they do. Will they do it? Yeah, they will. Now, I think the attitudes towards humans changes from tribe to tribe to tribe, just like it does with different tribes of humans, different races of humans.
Sure.
You've got how many times you hear about cannibalistic tribe, lost tribes and stuff like that, and I think it's the same thing with them. And I also think they can have a bad day if they're having a bad hair day, and you get in their way and don't heed their warnings. They might get a little violent with you. Have they killed people? Yes, reported they have killed people.
I've heard that.
But there's also reports of them saving people. So,
oh wow, okay. Well, I've often heard, the movie that I was talking about earlier. He started out, according to the witnesses and the people that made this film, that he was okay. He was pretty docile, and he used the word curious before. He was very curious, but people kept shooting at him, kept hurting him, and then he turned violent. And then he even sent, in this particular Bigfoot episode, he sent one guy to the hospital. Went into a state of shock. The guy almost died. But imagine us being shot at. People just see us or try to trap us or hunt us down. We might get a little irritated too, I think. Wouldn't you think?
Well, I've been shot at. I wasn't very happy about it. I don't blame the critter one bit for getting a little irritated. They are opportunistic. They will, if they come across an easy meal, and they'll take it. Be it a dog, a cat, pig, calf, baby horse, whatever.
Right.
If it's there, they'll snatch it up.
Now, I could like to switch gears. I mean, we've been talking about Bigfoot, but as you said at the top of the hour text, that cryptids can cover a whole myriad of creatures. It's not limited to Bigfoot. See, I mistakenly thought that for decades till we started talking.
Right.
Other cryptids, from what you said, were like a goat man or dog man, and some very, very kind of scary creatures. And you actually had a very, what can I say, impersonal encounter with one unexpectedly. And wow, I don't know. I would probably be in a state of shock if it happened to me. I don't know. So
I was.
I'm sure, but I mean, I don't know if I'd be around to talk about it. It would scare me so much. So if you don't mind, if you could share with the audience kind of what happened and what kind of cryptid it was.
Yeah, not at all. I was 16, and I had been out hunting, and I grew up in the country. I grew up hunting and fishing and camping by myself, from a very young age. And I was coming back in from a day of hunting, and the sun wasn't down yet. And in fact, I took you out to the spot where I had my sighting. I was walking down the road, and the road I was walking was a white gravel road at the time, and it bordered one side of our place. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just got an alert that your show for your show. I don't know if I woke it up, I disturbed the meal, or if he was just on the run and happened to run across in front of me. I don't know. But he come out of the brush on my left side and ran across the road and then jumped our fence. Now, when I say jumped the fence, he didn't hurdle it. He didn't sidestep it. He dove over the fence, and it was a 5-string barbed wire fence. And he dove over the fence, and he ran across the road on 2 legs. And he was probably about 7.5 feet tall. And it was a canine-like creature. It was what they're calling a dog man now. But back then, I didn't know what else it was except from, a werewolf. That's the only thing I knew to call it. And when it ran across the road in front of me, it was 20, 30 feet in front, broad daylight on a white gravel road. I mean, I saw what I saw. And the vision, the thing I have frozen in my head is when he turned his head and growled at me in mid stride. And but he dove over the fence and went down to all fours and just kind of melted into the grass. I saw the grass move for about 10, 15 yards and then nothing. So, and at that point I had a choice to make. I could out because I was just fixing to jump the fence and make a beeline for the house myself.
Oh man.
So I had a choice to make. I could either follow him through the tall grass, which the grass was about 4 feet high, or I could walk the long way and walk the road, and that's what I ended up doing. I walked the road. I figured, well, at least I'll get a swing at him if he comes up, because I didn't have any ammo. I had my gun, but I was out of ammo. But I just carried a little 410 shotgun at the time. I've been out rabbit hunting. I don't know how much damage I'd have done to this critter. I really don't. I may have just made him mad.
Man. This is broad at night.
Yeah. When I got back to the house, I walked in the back door and my mom had a rule that no guns in the kitchen. And I was in shock. I just walked in the back door, sat down in the kitchen chair and laid my gun on the kitchen table. And my mom was in the kitchen. I don't remember what she's doing. She's cooking, doing dishes, something. She turned around. She's going to jump on me for bringing the gun in. And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you? You're white as a ghost." And I couldn't talk. I was so petrified. I couldn't talk. And my sister lived next door to us, and she called her and, come over here and see what's wrong. And they come over there, and it took them about 45 minutes or so to calm me down enough where I could actually tell them what had happened. And they tried to tell me it was, your imagination ran away with you. You saw a coyote, or you saw a big dog, or you saw a homeless guy, or whatever. No, sure. I did not. I knew what I saw. I can draw a picture of what I saw. And, but I'm not much of an artist, but I've drawn a few pictures of what I saw. But, yeah. And then I think I encountered him. It took me about 6 months. It rattled me. It took me about 6 months to decide to go back and do what I was doing, go back out hunting and stuff. But, I did start going back out, and then a little while later, I ran into what I think was him again, but I didn't see him. I just heard him this time.
How tall do you think he was? Did you say that?
He was probably between 7 and 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
He was a big critter.
Did he make any noise at all?
He growled at me.
Just growled. Wow. Man.
And what was strange is, how you'll see a dog that's got black and pink in their mouth and their tongue is black and pink?
Yeah.
Is black. That's what his mouth was like. It was what they call mottled.
Yeah.
So that's what the inside of his mouth and his tongue was like.
Well, that is scary. Well, in your opinion, we talked about the origins of Bigfoot. We kind of just, speculated on that. How do you think Dogman comes into play?
Well, I have a theory that they were here pre-flood, pre the Great Flood. I think they were here before that. And somehow either they were allowed to survive or they just happened to survive. I think it's possible because if you look back centuries ago at the history, you'll see these kind of critters depicted as gods. And I think maybe that they were that intelligent and were looked at as gods. Supposedly, there was a whole army of dog men that fought for one of the pharaohs. I don't remember which one, but Anubis, one of the Egyptian gods, was he had a jackal-like head. He's a lot of times he's depicted with a man wearing a jackal mask, but if you really dive into it, he had the head of a jackal and the body of a man. And I think maybe they were that intelligent at one time.
Sure.
And maybe just to survive after the flood, they had to interbreed with not only us, but, and I don't know if they can breed with us or not. Maybe they can't, but maybe they can breed with dogs and wolves and stuff.
Sure.
And that's why we have so many different. That's why they look. There's so many different appearances of them because they
Okay.
look so different from a lot. They range. I mean, I've heard them described as looking like a schnauzer and a wolf and a jackal and
Sure.
So.
Well, Tex, I hate to interrupt, but I'd like to tell my audience we're actually going to bring another guest in to the Van Buren Variety Show. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you that we are interviewing Tex of the Trinity Para-Cryptid Research channel on YouTube. Make sure you check them out, like and subscribe. But Tex is not the only host. He is the co-host. I'm going to bring his co-host on board to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jason, also co-host of the Trinity Para-Cryptid Research channel. Jason, welcome to the premiere episode of the Van Buren Variety Show.
Howdy, Bob. It's good to be here. Glad to bring a little sexiness to the show, right? Give the ladies and some of the guys something to look at. I get it. I appreciate that.
Well, you mean me, right? Okay, I understand. Thank you very much for the compliment.
Yes. Give you something to look at. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we're good.
Right. Mm-hmm. But we've been talking, Jason, since about Bigfoot, cryptids. Tex just told his dogman encounter. So I'll shift over to you now. We talked about the different types of cryptids. So how would you define cryptid, the word, for my audience that maybe are not familiar with the word?
Right. So cryptids come from the word cryptozoology, which means hidden animals, right? So I do like to draw a slightly harder, thicker line on a lot of cryptids because for me, a cryptid is a natural animal, right? It's not supernatural. It's not paranormal in any way. So for me from my views, that most cryptids are simply animals that are just undiscovered, right? Most of them are just undiscovered creatures, or they're creatures that existed in antiquity that survived the flood and just didn't, and maybe belong more in that environment. They didn't change, right? They didn't shift over. Okay. And I think we lost Bob on his own show. Anyway, assuming we're still alive.
We're still here. I was having some technical difficulties just now, so
I understand.
Excuse. This is the premiere show, so see, they're going to have a lot of malfunctions around here. So
your map has gone wild, things like that. I get it. Hey, that's the joy of a live show, right?
Yep. Premiere show. I can use that excuse. This is my first show. That's only time I can use this excuse. So
exactly. After this, it's all. Yeah. After this, you're on your own. So
yes.
Again, so for me, a cryptid is a living animal. It is a natural animal, not, but again, I think a lot of what makes cryptids is that they were animals that survived the flood that seem like they belong pre-flood, right? These would be things like we would consider them to be dinosaurs or dinosaur-like or Pleistocene animals, and that's the majority of those. However, there are cryptids like definitely, on that Venn diagram, parts of Bigfoot fall into that paranormal aspect. I would argue, I think Dogman is a paranormal creature. I don't necessarily consider it a true cryptid. And we have things like Mothman and some of these other things that do appear to be, they appear physical, but they are also heavily paranormal, right? So I consider them paranormal. I don't consider them cryptids. Because I do think the problem is how you approach a paranormal problem is different from how you would approach a physical problem, right? Or an animal, right? Regardless of how intelligent an animal is, it eats, it sleeps, it defecates, it procreates, right? That's like you can find and identify any animal by these things. And that's what the problem is, though. We have so much of this paranormal stuff with some of these other creatures. I think we need to start looking at them as strictly paranormal creatures because that's going to change how we address these situations. Again, so like the question of Dogman. On the physical side, if it is a cryptid, one of the things that Tex and I have sort of thrown out there is the possibility of it being a lemur. There used to be giant lemurs that walked the earth. They look, if you've seen a lot of some of these recreations, they look like giant wolf people because they were primates, or technically they're prosimians, right?
Right.
So they're not true primates, but that means they could walk upright. They had hands, they had feet, and there are some accounts of dogmen having feet and not necessarily that sort of dog-like leg. But they did have long snouts. They did have some rather sharp teeth because, again, they're prosimians. So it is a possibility that dogman is a relative of some of these giant lemurs that used to walk the earth.
Interesting.
The other possibility, though, is I do tend to fall on the idea that dogman is a paranormal entity and not a living, breathing population of bipedal creatures. I go back to I can't consider them to be wolves in any such sense of the word. The problem is,
you mean like a werewolf or something like that,
right?
I mean,
Well, okay. So here's the thing: I'm not even going to rule out the idea of it being something like a werewolf. And what I mean by that is something where a human has become or manifested or something. I don't even rule that out. But that doesn't make it a dog, right? It's not natural. It's not.
Sure.
This is not some sort of bipedal dog that just happens to exist. There is
Sure.
something else going on. So, like I said, with things like Bigfoot, I think what we've seen there is a much larger collection of differing phenomena, right? I do think there's a physical primate, but then I think there are other creatures that are paranormal. People are seeing them, they're encountering them, and the problem is we're lumping them all into the same box, and that's why we're not getting anywhere. Same thing with Dogman. I consider it to be more paranormal. We've talked to Vic Cundiff, and that really does seem to be sort of the overarching theme on a lot of Dogman encounters, is that it seems to be more about. It seems to have more to do with the paranormal than an actual physical breeding creature.
Interesting, Jason. Now, before you came on board, we had Tex talk about his dogman encounter. You also have an encounter, I understand. Could you tell my audience, tell us kind of about what you experienced?
So, yeah. Okay, I was going to do a Tex joke, but I'll let it go. I'll let this one slide. So, no, I was 11 or 12. So it's early 90s. It's the summer. And there's I live in North Texas, and I'll pretty much always have, except for when I went to college. But I was in the 10 Mile Creek, which is a tributary off of the Trinity. And what most people probably don't know is that all of North Texas basically sits on this giant limestone slab.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to dig very far before you just can't dig anymore.
Right.
And so this creek is actually like 15, 20 feet down into the bedrock, right?
Oh, wow.
And so you really can't see into it at all. And that's really the truth behind a lot of the creeks and rivers in North Texas is they're there because you can't see them. The tree line is there, and it actually prevents you from looking into it. Well, this creek cuts into the bedrock by like 10 to 15 feet in some places, sometimes even more. But average is like 15 to 20 feet. And it's sheer, walls on most sides. But a few places the wall has collapsed, so you can get into it and fish and do whatever you want, right? A friend of mine and I, it was about 10:30, 11 a.m. We were wrapping up because it was starting to get hot. It's June, right? He's already up the hill into the tree line, and I'm following him. Just as I get into the tree line, I hear this sound. It's a call of something, but I've never heard it before. And again, I spent a lot of my time outside. I knew what the animals looked like. So I'm like, what the heck was that? And I poked my head out because I could hear it coming from. So the creek sort of snakes around, and I'm in the middle of this straightaway, right? So I poked my head out, and from this one corner comes what I think is the largest blue heron I've ever seen in my life. Oh, wow. Right? It's the same colors, but this wingspan's about 8 to 10 feet. And I know because, again, the creek walls where I'm at is a pretty consistent, width. So I can see it. I'm like, man, that is really big. So I'm watching it, and the thing is, it's just gliding. Never flaps. It's never flapped its wings. It's just sort of gliding, and it gets about 5 feet in front of my face, wingtip to my face, and that's when I realized, yes, it looked like a heron, but it had scales, or it was more of a smooth. skin. It had a membranous wing. It did not have feathers, and it didn't have a beak. It had more of a solid reptilian face, and what I thought had been the legs. You know, when a crane or a heron flies, it sticks its legs out behind it. Well, what I thought had been the legs was actually this tail with a flange on the end, this sort of diamond-shaped flange. And that's when I realized I'm looking at a pterosaur. And I just watch it. And so I'm watching it go away, and then it banks and just disappears. So I'm thinking, what the heck just happened? You know, there wasn't a whole lot of emotion or anything attached to it. I didn't feel like threatened. It didn't even seem to know that I was there. It was just flying by. And my friend's like, "Hey, you coming or what?" I'm like, "Did you see that Now I called it a pterodactyl at the time, because even though I love dinosaurs, because what kid doesn't? I'm thinking pteranodon. I'm thinking I didn't think, ramphoractoid pterosaur, which is what it was. So I'm like, "Did you see that pterodactyl?" And he's like, and he just laughs, says, "You're crazy," and walks off. That's why I realized he missed it. I saw it, and no one's going to believe me. So I shuffled that off in my memory for 20 some odd years.
Sure.
And it's only been very recently that I've sort of actually come back to it. In fact, I'd kind of gotten into all this sort of in a backwards way. I had even written a book on living pterosaurs before I realized, it was a short one, just making the argument for why they existed. But I never believed mine was real. Like, I actually thought somehow I had created this thought in my head. It wasn't until after I'd already done a small booklet on them actually existing in history and proving it through artwork that you can prove these creatures have existed. Even after writing that, I didn't think it was, because these things don't exist in Dallas, Texas, right? They don't exist south of Dallas. They don't exist they exist in some far-flung,
kingdom or something.
Yeah. They believe in they reside in the Congo, Papua New Guinea, something where there just isn't a lot of people, that kind of thing. And so I'd even I wrote a very, very short booklet on sort of proving, using artwork and some other accounts, like these things have survived because there's too much consistency. We just call them different things, right? In Europe, they called them wyverns. It's the Jersey Devil. It's all the same thing. It's just we haven't taken it seriously for the last 100 years. And long story short, I'll jump ahead here. I found other people who have had similar experiences in the southern in the southern Oklahoma, North Texas area. Well, again, it came through some friends of mine who were doing a video on it at the time, and that really opened my eyes. So I'm like, I wonder. And so I got myself into a book deal and decided to start going around asking questions. Because then I found out, even before the book deal, two people I'd gone to church with for years had encounters in and around the North Texas area of these living. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. So, like I said, I got myself into this book deal, and I'm like, okay, I need to come up with material, and it can't just be Bigfoot. So let me go ahead and do the other creatures, right? Old one-eye-outed link cranberry and the goat man and all these things. But I'm like, let me go ahead and see if I can find some more stories on the pterosaurs, and it did not take long to find more. And that's sort of the weird thing. Like, if as long as people think you're legitimate and you're not going to chastise them or think they're crazy, they'll tell you what they've seen. And a lot of people, not everyone would go on the record, because a lot of people are like, I can't, they didn't want me to put a false name out there, but they also didn't want to go on. They didn't really want to go on the record. And I respected that. But a lot of people have seen these things. Again, southern Oklahoma, North Texas, people are seeing these creatures a lot. So they're here. The thing is, though, they seem to look, because they're not outrageously large, right? It's not like the Quetzalcoatl, which was the size of a flying giraffe, right? It's something like that, right? These things, I mean, a wingspan of 8 to 10 feet, don't get me wrong, that's a big critter, but it's not, it's like you could mistake that for a heron if you're not looking close enough, and that's the real problem. They seem to have very similar colorations, right, to herons and cranes or pelicans. They do when they fly, they make that S curve with their neck, right? And they have that long flange tail. So they very much look like cranes that are really the gray ones look like blue herons while they're flying. So unless you're actually stopping to look at it, like, and that's the whole thing. Everyone said, I mean, to the person. At first, I thought I was looking at a pelican, or I was looking at a crane, or for me, a heron. One was an owl, but it's only because it was at night, right? It's like everyone said, okay, well, at first I thought it was this, but then I got a better look at it. And that's sort of the number one thing for me, because people who imagine things or have, hallucinations, they know what they're looking at immediately. Like, there is no question. This is something I've actually talked to psychologists about. I'm like, could this have been hallucination? And one thing they've all said is when people hallucinate, they know what they're looking at because it's coming out of your own head, right? Like, if you're hallucinating, your dead mother is talking to you. You're not going to be like, oh, I was talking to somebody, then I realized it was my dead mother. No, you knew you were talking to your dead mother because it's your hallucination. You don't see it and then realize it's something else later on if it's a hallucination. So you got to ask, what is it that people are seeing? And Occam's razor just says then people have got to be seeing living pterosaurs. We've got the history of them. We have a ton of eyewitnesses, really throughout history, but definitely here in North Texas as well. Isn't it just more easy to believe that people are seeing living pterosaurs and not seeing something instead of all having some sort of weird mass hallucination of unconnected people over 30 years?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Now, Texas was probably hallucinating.
Well, you mentioned several things that were interesting. You mentioned we've been talking about the cryptids and Bigfoot, Dogman, etc. You mentioned the paranormal half of this. So let's get into that now. Now we've all heard the word paranormal, obviously, but for audience sake, when you describe paranormal, what would be your definition of that, and like specific examples?
Again, everyone draws their lines in different places, right? Because where things get gray is, what if something can take physical form? So for me, I draw the line at anything over that is outside of normal, conventional human or animal parameters, right? Like a dog is not going to teleport on you, right? Dogs are, they may run off, they may do whatever, but a dog is a dog. A cow is a cow. A person is a person. Like, we're not telepathic creatures per se, by and large. We're not going to teleport from place to place. We're not going to fly around from place to place. We're not going to turn invisible. So once you start moving through walls, you hit, for me, the paranormal. Now, things that fall into this would be what most people call ghosts or demons. I think if something's mind speaking to you telepathically, I think that's paranormal, right? So the problem is it's more about the parameters, because it is clear some of these creatures can take on multiple forms. A great example of this is the Dallas goatman. So here's the deal. North Texas has a bunch of goatmen, right? And I actually explained where a lot of these are coming from a lore perspective in the book, in this most recent book I did. But at White Rock Lake, which is a man-made lake in Dallas, it's right there off of downtown, there is the legend of the White Rock Lake goatman. I have several accounts where people have actually seen a physical satyr. It is a creature that appears, it has horns, a human face, human upper torso, goat-like legs, and it appears for all intents and purposes to be a solid creature, but it does disappear. It manages to vanish. And you move off of White Rock Lake just a mile or two, and there are these other tributaries off of the creek. People have seen other very bizarre creatures that in many cases do seem to reflect a lot of the overall forms of the goat man, but it's lacking the horns. It's lacking the actual goat legs. It seems to be more almost, in many ways, it reminds me of a tall gray, right? Elongated skull, very flat face, very thin, very gaunt, backwards facing legs, things like that. So it's like, well, hold up. We either have to believe we have this weird spindly alien looking critter running around in the dark and experiencing and demonstrating paranormal abilities, and then a mile and a half down the road, you follow the creek up and then there's this creature that teleports and does all the same things, but just happens to have horns. Okay,
Wow.
that tells me, are we saying that they're two different creatures, or is it the same creature in different forms?
I see.
And I'm going to flat out say, I'm sorry, but if you're disappearing and reappearing at will, if you can become invisible, if you can affect physical, have a physical effect on cars, even though no one can see you, then yeah, you're not tangible like we are. You are a paranormal creature. And it just makes sense that this is the same creature or group of creatures that are appearing in different forms.
I see that.
Go
ahead, Tex. I have a question. Go ahead.
In Lake Worth, you got the Goat Man, which, what was it, 15, 20 people saw at one time?
Yeah. Which appears to be a Bigfoot, which in that one appears to be an actual tangible Bigfoot.
We think it was actually a Squatch. But I mean, it threw a tire 7,500 yards, at people. It jumped on somebody's car, took gouges out of the fender,
Yep.
Wow.
And, that mass sighting that they had, one of them, if not more of them, were law enforcement.
There were two police officers at the scene, yes.
Yeah. So, it's hard to just write that off, that, like we said, we think that was probably a Squatch. They've been reported to wear, skins of other animals. Maybe that's where it came from, so, I mean, there's a whole slew of explanations of why they look the way
when
they
I
do.
think of paranormal, though, when I think of the word paranormal, and like maybe I have a very narrow view before I, got associated with the channel here. When I think of paranormal, I'm thinking, when people see a dead relative that's passed on a long time ago. For example, there was a movie a while back. Well, it wasn't a movie. It was like a biography. Maybe I've seen it. It was called A Haunting in Georgia. And what it was a little girl. She was only 4 years old. And this older man in a dark suit comes out of nowhere. He's a very nice man. He talks to her. He's very cordial to her. And the parents cannot see anything. They think it's an imaginary friend. Right. Well, long story short, there was a caretaker on that property, and it was him. And she called him by name. So when I hear paranormal, I think of that. And the other side of that is like demons, unfortunately. So what do you think of, like, I guess you could say, the ghost phenomena? I mean, seeing dead relatives, dead friends, or just people that have passed on. What's your opinion of that? Is that, you think that's real, or is that a possibility, or once you're dead, you're gone? If I could ask, is that really a paranormal experience?
No. Again, that's why I had mentioned up front ghosts as a thing. Now, the problem with things like ghosts and hauntings is they also come in different flavors. You have what are called unintelligent hauntings, then you've got intelligent hauntings, and then you have poltergeist-like activity. You've got shadow men, things like this. So they seem to come in different flavors. My general opinion is like the unintelligent hauntings, and just to define the term here, that is sort of like what we see at Gettysburg, where at certain times of day people see these ghostly apparitions of soldiers, but they do the same thing over and over and over again around the same time. We hear these stories all the time of people of a house where it's like, well, there was this woman, but she's always doing the same thing, or it's a kid and he's always doing the same thing. For
like
me,
a memory.
Right, exactly. My belief on this, and this is I don't want to get too long-winded because there's plenty to talk about, but rather is that our universe is more controlled by thought and emotion than we realize.
Okay.
And I think that there are certain events that leave really physical, almost tactile impressions in space and time. And what we are seeing with these sort of, they're just rewinding over and over again. That's not some spirit that's trapped there. Whatever has happened there, for whatever reason, there is something that has left an indelible mark, and we're perceiving that mark. So it
could be good or bad.
It could be good or bad. So it's like writing on a pad of paper, right? You remove that sheet of paper, and you could actually, you could take a pencil and you could see, and you could still read the text multiple pages down, because you've left that kind of an impression. Same thing. It's it's something that has been marked, and we are still perceiving it throughout history. Now,
Let's see.
So that's the sort of unintelligent hauntings. The intelligent hauntings, I think we need to take with a bit more skepticism, not of the witnesses, but of the person or thing these creatures appear to be.
See.
I think one of the big mistakes that everyone in this community makes, paranormal and cryptozoological, is I think we jump to a lot of conclusions. And if some dude were to walk up to me or text and say, "Hey, I'm Napoleon Bonaparte, and I've simply survived for the last 200 years," we would look at him and say, "We need a little bit more evidence for that." We wouldn't take you, because the obvious answer is, it is like, "Hey, you're just a crazy dude," right?
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, show me evidence that you are Napoleon Bonaparte. The problem is, it's like we have these spirits, and they show up like, "Yes, I'm your Aunt Gertrude," and you're like, "Well, tell me something only Aunt Gertrude would know." Well, hold up. How do you know that's only something Aunt Gertrude would know?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
We were just talking about a creature that could take physical form and have actually affect the physical world, that is a shapeshifter and appears to people, terrifying them. Well, who's to say these other spirits aren't the same thing, just maybe either less powerful or playing it safe? And that's something we also need to take into account with a lot of this paranormal activity is, are they just stringing you along so you can give it the attention it wants?
So you mentioned shapeshifters. Could that include demons as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
No, absolutely they are. I mean, we know that they are. That's kind of the big thing. And that's really one of those things that muddies a lot of this water, right? Is these creatures may not be what they appear to be. Not only are they not what they say that they are, right? Let's take UFOs, for example, the UFO phenomena. We have these little gray people, and sometimes they're talls, and sometimes they're reptilians, and sometimes they look like ants. Fine. Let's take all these creatures. Okay, we don't know that that's what we're actually looking at. That's what our eyes are telling, or what we're even being told. Because a lot of this is from repressed memory. How do you know that's a legit memory that you're getting? In fact, I have a theory that a lot of abductions aren't abductions. That there are people who are clearly taken, but that the majority of people are actually, they never leave their house or their bed or their car or whatever. That a lot of these repressed memories that are brought back up are essentially programmed, or even if they went through it, it's a psychic event, not necessarily a physical event. Not that physical things don't happen to them, but that they aren't put on a craft and taken somewhere. Rather, that's all something that's happening, on a psychic level. But that people could be coming, people or demons or both, Nephilim, could be coming in and injecting them with whatever they want injected, remove whatever they do, and they just leave, right?
Not necessarily physically, correct?
Right. Well, some physically, some not physically. But there's reason to believe that some of this is physical. They're just not actually leaving. That's all happening in sort of a psychic world, like a trance, right? Or an astral projection. And it's a memory that's implanted to sort of cover what's really happening. But the broader point here is, if you were to do a Venn diagram of paranormal phenomena, you'd be surprised how often things like shadow people, men in black, mind speak, telepathy, ghosts. There's a lot of weird things that sort of all clump together that doesn't make sense if these things were what they claim to be, right? And that does include people who claim to have seen Sasquatch. Again, which goes back to maybe not everything is what we think it is. So the problem with the paranormal is that throws this giant monkey wrench in, is we don't know that, again, people may be telling you the truth. They may be accurately recounting what they think they encountered. But that doesn't mean that they actually encountered what they think they encountered, or what they remember having done to them. That all may be implanted memories or psychic events or creatures that have shape-shifted into something else. So, again, I know a lot of missionaries who have gone to very primitive tribes that do have voodoo, witch doctors and all these things, and they'll tell you that they've faced off with these shamans and witches and things that will change. They will physically change. My question is, though, are they physically changing, or is the demon that they're serving or that's within them actually manifesting out of them? And what we're seeing is the creature within them, and that they're giving you that power. Well,
good thought.
The problem is, if we've got that here, then we've got that everywhere else too. And so it's one of those things where it's a monkey wrench. And unfortunately, a lot of people, which is why I joined Tex in this, we talk about this right on the show, which is why y'all, if y'all aren't already, y'all should come over and watch the show, because we're going to have those conversations. And it's one of those things where a lot of people in the community don't want to talk about that, because it makes them uncomfortable. They're happy with gray aliens being aliens from Zeta Reticuli, right? They're happy with the ghost that's visiting them being Aunt Gertrude. They're happy with those things being what they think they are. They're not happy with the fact when you're like, but tell me why Aunt Gertrude's doing X, Y, Z. And by the way, why are you also having these night terrors where you're feeling held down and some creature in black is trying to suck out your soul, while you're undergoing sleep paralysis? It's like, could we have that conversation? And a lot of people don't want it, but we
don't want to.
But we lovingly do, because Tex is an awesome guy.
Well, guys, we've had a great show. I can't believe an hour's already up. But before I do, I want to tell my audience now, in addition to promoting their channel, which we'll talk about really quickly, but I do want to promote Jason really quick. He is a writer, and he has written a book. Jason, tell us about your book, and if people are interested, where can they order it from?
Well, you can get it from Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Actually, most retailers have it online. If you're in North Texas, Barnes & Noble has it at a few of their locations as well. But it basically, it's just going down all the weird critters that people are seeing in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I wanted to keep it really sort of limited in range, so I couldn't talk about everything. But here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, one of the 7th largest conurbations in America, we've got Bigfoot. We've talked about the Goat Man, which is both one and the same thing, right? And I talked about the myth about how Bigfoot becomes Goat Man, but then seemingly creates another Goat Man. We've got lechusas. We've got living dinosaurs of at least 1 or 2 different varieties. We have giant catfish, what may looks to be a giant eel, and some critters, I don't even know what to call them. They just are. And they are weird and they are bizarre, but it also gave me a chance to lovingly throw in some history about Texas, and specifically North Texas, to let people know, where did we come from, right? Like, why is Grand Prairie called Grand Prairie? Where does the name Dallas come from? In a 50-year span, Fort Worth literally went from being a military fort to being an industrial powerhouse. The kind of impact we had on World War II. The fact that Ellis County was the largest cotton producing county in the 1930s in the world.
Interesting.
So it's little things like that. Like this, it's a love letter to my home. And to the history of the area, but I get to talk about some of the fun things that a lot of people aren't aware that's here, right? I've heard a lot of people say,
So everybody pick up Jason's book, Metroplex Monsters. You'll really enjoy it. See, I've got my copy too. So it's a really interesting book, and I really recommend you pick it up. I think you really enjoy it, and he's done a lot of research. So. Let's talk really quick, though, about your channel now. We've talked about cryptids. We've talked about Sasquatch. We've talked about the paranormal. Let's talk about the channel now that you guys are hosting. It's called the Trinity Para-Cryptid Research. Tell us about the episodes or the shows that you have during the week. What is your topic of conversation? I mean, it should be obvious, but for the audience, I mean, kind of what is this channel, Trinity Para-Cryptid Research, all about?
Well, before I get into that, I want to point out that Jason has his own channel, and he has his own website, and his website is serupapers.com.
That's true. Yep.
And he has his YouTube channel, his own YouTube channel, which is not just another Bible study, and it's not. It's you have shows Thursday night and Sunday, just about noon, right? and it's not like sitting through church. That's what I love about it. You can ask him hard questions as you can interact with him. You can ask him the questions and that you're sitting in church and you can't talk, but you can ask this man questions. That's what I really love about it.
Good.
Now, as
So
far as
everybody
our
log
channel,
in. Yeah,
as
let's go
far as-
talk about Trinity.
yeah,
Yeah.
as far as our channel goes, it started out. I was on another channel and I decided I just kind of want to spread my wings, do my own thing, and then it kind of snowballed on me because I just wanted to give people a place, a safe place to we all know that word to go with these encounters that they can talk about and get help because a lot of people are so traumatized by these encounters that they quit doing the things they love. They quit going outdoors. They quit going hunting. They quit going fishing. They quit going camping.
Mm-hmm.
And we give them an avenue to be able to talk about this, not just on the show. If they want to come on the show, that's fine. But if they just want to contact us and ask us and talk to us, and help them get past this, we'll do what we can. That's really the main thing about the channel is we want to help people. Now, what do we do on the side per se? Well, we've got 2 shows right now. We've got Texas Front Porch, which airs every Monday night at 6:30 p.m. Central. And, it kind of started out as a Bigfoot channel type thing and show, but we don't stick to that. We go all over the map. I mean, we really do. We've talked to we talked to Bigfoot people. We've talked to covered the UFO topic, the
Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, I mean, it just I've
Paranormal.
Yeah,
serial killers. We talk about paranormal.
We've talked to exotic energy, things like that.
Yeah, tracking. So it goes all over the place. And what we're trying to do is just give people, because information is power, knowledge is power, and that's what
Absolutely.
we're trying to do. And we're trying to answer these tough questions that nobody else is asking, like Jason referred to a while ago. It's like we can't be scared. We have to be open-minded enough to go, what if? What if I didn't see a dog man? What if it was a lemur? I don't think so, but whatever.
Yeah. But we don't know, and that's sort of the question is how you got to be willing to ask the question, which we do, and that's because let's be honest, ain't nobody getting any closer to these things.
No.
Mm-hmm. So we got it. So it's like if what we've done for the last 50, 60 years hasn't worked,
right,
then we need to start asking some questions.
Right.
And that's what I love about the channel is that we allow ourselves the ability to ask hard questions.
And most importantly, you listen with an open mind as well.
And we're not just armchair researchers either. We do go in the field and do boots on the ground research. There is evidence captured and posted on the channel. Disembodied voices, growls. I mean, it's just the list goes on. So
Texas TikTok account where he twerks all the time. I mean, we're out there. We're out there doing it. Yeah.
But we've got some exciting stuff coming up, show wise and field wise. So
sounds like y'all are having the same fun on your channel that I hope to have on mine. And just a little plug in for mine. And I told Jason, I don't know if you heard the top of the hour, but I explained to my audience as this premiere episode, some people have asked me, well, why am I doing it? And the number one word that comes to mind is fun. I see a lot of fun having it. And as a variety show, I will hope to have different guests, different topics, different opinions, hobbies, professions, special interests. I mean, even though I'm hosting the show, I'm going to learn a lot just by having everybody on. So, and I'm hoping people will see that this is a fun channel. I am not here to confront anybody or, yell at anybody like you see on some shows on television. I'm here to learn. And I may not agree or with everything that's being said, but I'm going to keep the ears open, and the mind open. So I think that's probably the best thing to do. I'm not here to compete with anybody. If another YouTube person has more subscribers than me, then my response is wonderful, great job, But I feel like if you make it a competition, it's not fun anymore. If you have to worry about what somebody next door is doing. So
right,
my little plug-in, it seems like that's what y'all are doing on your channel. Y'all are having fun with it. We want more subscribers. We want more people to watch this. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not jealous of somebody else's success.
No.
yeah, there's no point in jealousy. But yeah, fun is what we're fun is what we're about. But we are but we do want to get to the truth on these things, and that you can't be serious all the time. Right, you got to be willing to look at yourself and laugh when and where
exactly.
It's appropriate. Like at Texas twerking, right? I mean, he's been doing it for a while, but it's still weird. It's still a little weird when he gets those high those high thongs on. You're like, dude, do you want to go something a little maybe a size larger? And he's like, no, I like the way it jiggles. Just saying. But you got to do it, right? You got to get out there. The key word is fun. And have some fun with it, yeah.
Well, guys, Tex, Jason, the time went by too fast, and I couldn't be more honored, really from the heart, that y'all are on my premiere show. And as I've told my audience before, I am executive producer of the Trinity Para-Cryptid Research Channel, and I'm behind the scenes. Maybe I'm not as behind the scenes as they would like me to be sometimes, but it's great to have my own channel, and they've really helped me out. So I'm very happy that y'all are here. I'm very humbled by your presence here. So,
no, we're glad that you're out here, man.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. I'm excited that you started this. I know you've been super excited about it, and I'm really happy for you, brother. Really.
Well, thanks a lot, Tex, Jason. We'll catch y'all again. And again, thank you for being on the Van Buren Variety Show. And to my audience, I appreciate you tuning into this premiere episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. Remember, I'm here every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. So we'll have another guest next week, another interesting topic. So make sure you tune in. And again, thank you for viewing the Van Buren Variety Show.